Hey Reddit, I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. I've been sitting with this for a few days now, and I still don't know what to do. I thought I'd post here because I've seen how helpful and supportive this community can be. For context, my name is Eric, 35M, and my wife's name is Jessica, 34F. We've been married for 7 years and together for 10. I always thought we had a solid relationship. Now, I'm questioning everything. A little background on us. Jessica and I met at a charity event a decade ago. She was volunteering as a coordinator, and I was dragged there by a friend. She's one of those people who lights up a room just by walking in. Smart, beautiful, funny, the whole package. I fell hard and fast, and luckily, she felt the same way. Our relationship moved quickly, but it never felt rushed. After 3 years of dating, I proposed, and we had a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends and family. The first few years of marriage were everything I hoped for. We traveled, worked on building our careers, and talked often about starting a family someday. We haven't had kids yet, partly because life has been so busy. Jessica's career has taken off in recent years. She's in marketing, and her company keeps her busy with events, dinners, and networking. I'm proud of her, but lately, I've felt like she's been pulling away from me. In the past 6 months, things have felt different. Jessica's been more distant, both emotionally and physically. She's always glued to her phone, and she's been going out a lot more for work dinners and team-building events. I've tried to brush it off as my own insecurity, but it's been gnawing at me. When I bring it up, she insists everything's fine and that I'm overthinking. You know how demanding my job is, she says. And she's not wrong. Marketing can be a grind, but something still doesn't sit right with me. Last week, I decided to test my gut instinct. I told Jessica that I had to go on a business trip out of town. I work in sales, so traveling isn't out of the ordinary for me. I told her I'd be gone from Wednesday evening until Friday night. She seemed completely unfazed, kissing me goodbye and wishing me luck as I left for the airport. What she didn't know is that I wasn't going anywhere. I drove a few blocks away, parked in a lot, and waited until I was sure she thought I was gone. Then, I drove back home and stayed with a friend across town. My friend, Kyle, thought I was crazy for doing this, but I needed to know the truth. I spent the night going over every possible scenario in my head, hoping I was wrong but preparing for the worst. The next day, I decided to check in on Jessica. I drove back toward our neighborhood and parked far enough away that she wouldn't see my car. I waited for a while, and eventually she left the house. She wasn't dressed for work. She was wearing a red dress I hadn't seen before, the kind of outfit you'd wear for a nice dinner or a date. My stomach dropped. I followed her, keeping my distance, and watched as she drove to a restaurant downtown. It's one of those trendy places we'd only go to for special occasions, definitely not the kind of spot for a casual dinner. I parked nearby and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. About 10 minutes later, a man walked up to the restaurant and greeted her at the entrance. He was tall, good-looking, and well-dressed. They hugged, and she smiled at him in a way I hadn't seen in months. My heart shattered. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told me everything I needed to know. They were leaning in close, laughing, and completely focused on each other. At one point, the guy reached across the table and held her hand. That was it. I couldn't watch anymore. I drove back to Kyle's place, my mind racing. I haven't confronted Jessica yet. I've been replaying the entire relationship in my head, wondering where it all went wrong. Part of me wants to believe there's an innocent explanation, but deep down, I know there isn't. I just don't know what to do. Should I confront her? Should I try to salvage the relationship? Or is this the beginning of the end? After seeing Jessica with that man at the restaurant, my world felt like it had been flipped upside down. I couldn't think straight, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Kyle tried to reassure me, saying things like, maybe it's a work thing, man. You don't know for sure. But I knew what I saw. The way she looked at him, the way he touched her hand, it wasn't work. It was personal. I spent most of the night going over my options. Part of me wanted to storm home and confront her immediately. Another part of me wanted to gather more evidence before making any accusations. What if she denied it? What if I didn't have enough proof to make her come clean? The thought of her lying to my face again was unbearable. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I called in sick to work and spent the morning scrolling through our shared cell phone account online. Jessica and I are on the same plan, which means I can see her call and text history. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I hoped it would give me some answers. It didn't take long to notice a pattern. Over the past few months, Jessica had been texting and calling one number far more than anyone else, way more than me. I didn't recognize the number, and it wasn't saved in her contacts, but the call log showed dozens of interactions, often late at night or during times she claimed to be working. My stomach turned as I scrolled through page after page of evidence. I copied the number and ran a quick search online. It didn't come up as a business or anything obvious, so I decided to call it from a burner app one downloaded on my phone. My heart was racing as I hit dial. After a few rings, a man's voice answered. "Hello," he said. I froze. It was the same voice I'd heard outside the restaurant the night before. I quickly hung up, my hands trembling. I didn't know what to do with this information, but now I had a name to go with the voice. When I ran the number through another lookup service, it came back registered to someone named Ryan Parker. The name didn't mean anything to me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica had been lying to me for months. That evening, I decided to tell Jessica again. I told Kyle what I was planning, and while he thought it was a little extreme, he didn't try to stop me. "You need closure, man," he said. "Just be careful." Jessica left the house around 7 p.m., once again dressed up like she was going somewhere special. I followed her downtown, keeping a safe distance, and sure enough, she parked near the same restaurant as the night before. This time, I stayed in my car and watched as Ryan walked up to meet her. They hugged again, and she kissed him on the cheek. My chest felt tight as I watched them walk inside together. I couldn't believe this was my wife, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. The betrayal was suffocating. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, trying to decide what to do. Should I go inside and confront her? Should I take photos as proof? Or should I wait and see how far this would go? In the end, I decided to wait. I wanted to be sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, before I confronted her. So I stayed in the car, watching and waiting. About an hour later, they left the restaurant together. They were laughing and talking like they didn't have a care in the world. Ryan walked her to her car, and for a moment, I thought they were going to part ways. But then, to my horror, he leaned in and kissed her. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My wife, my Jessica, was kissing another man right in front of me. I snapped a few photos with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I wasn't sure if they'd even turn out. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. I just sat there, watching as she drove away, leaving me with 1,000 unanswered questions and a heart shattered into pieces. When I got back to Kyle's place, I showed him the photos. "That's it, man," he said. "You have all the proof you need. You need to confront her." But I wasn't ready. I needed time to process everything, to figure out what I was going to say. Most of all, I needed to figure out if there was any way to save this marriage, or if it was already over. I spent the next morning pacing around Kyle's apartment, trying to figure out my next move. I had the photos, I had the call logs, and I had seen Jessica with Ryan twice now. It was more than enough to confirm my worst fears. But despite all of that, I wasn't ready to confront her. Every time I thought about it, I pictured the look on her face when I told her I knew. Would she deny it? Would she try to turn it around on me? Or would she finally admit the truth? Kyle, who had been patient with me so far, finally spoke up. "Eric, you can't keep sitting on this. It's eating you alive. You have to confront her sooner or later." "I know," I said. I need to be ready. Once I do this, there's no going back." That evening, I decided to test the waters. Jessica was on the couch scrolling through her phone when I sat down next to her. "How was your day?" I asked casually. "Good," she said, not looking up. "Busy as usual. Do you have any plans tomorrow?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She hesitated, just for a moment, before responding. "Not really. I might run some errands, but nothing special." "What?" "Just curious," I said, forcing a smile. "Maybe we could do something together this weekend. It feels like we haven't spent much time together lately." Jessica glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "Yeah, maybe," she said. "I'll let you know." Her answer wasn't exactly reassuring, but I let it go. I didn't want to push too hard and risk tipping her off. Instead, I decided to keep an eye on her and see if she'd make any plans that didn't involve me. The next day, Jessica told me she had a meeting with a client in the afternoon. "It's a working lunch," she said, grabbing her bag. "I probably won't be back until late." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But as soon as she left, I grabbed my keys and followed her. Sure enough, she drove to the same trendy restaurant where I'd seen her with Ryan before. I parked a few blocks away and watched as she went inside. My stomach churned as I waited, and about 10 minutes later, Ryan walked in. He greeted her with a smile, and they sat down at a corner table. This time, I couldn't just sit in my car and watch. I needed to know what they were saying, what they were doing. So I walked into the restaurant, my heart pounding, and asked the hostess for a table near the back. From my seat, I could see them clearly. They were laughing, leaning in close, and completely engrossed in each other. At one point, Ryan reached across the table and touched her hand. Jessica didn't pull away. I took a few more photos, my hands shaking, and left before they could notice me. I couldn't sit there any longer, watching my wife act like she was single and carefree. I felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. That night, I didn't say anything to Jessica when she came home. I couldn't. She acted like nothing had happened, asking about my day and talking about her meeting. I could barely look at her. I went to bed early, lying awake for hours and trying to figure out how to confront her. I knew I couldn't keep this up much longer. By the next morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront Jessica, but I wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't give her room to twist the truth. I spent the morning going over my evidence, the photos, the call logs, the details I'd collected over the past few days. I needed to be prepared for anything she might say. That evening, after dinner, I told Jessica we needed to talk. She looked up from her phone, surprised. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I need to ask you something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I need you to be completely honest with me." Jessica frowned, setting her phone down. "Okay," she said cautiously. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "Who's Ryan?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, she just stared at me. "What are you talking about?" she said, trying to sound confused. "Don't lie to me, Jessica," I said, my voice firm. "I've seen you with him. At the restaurant. Twice." Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Finally, she shook her head. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. "He's just a friend from work." "Do friends hold hands over dinner?" I asked, pulling out my phone and showing her the photos. "Do friends kiss in parking lots?" Jessica's face crumpled, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Eric," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "Didn't mean for what to happen?" I asked. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, wiping her tears. "A few months," she admitted. "But it's not serious. I swear, it's not what you think." "Not serious?" I repeated, my anger boiling over. "You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, and you want me to believe it's not serious?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. I don't know. I've been feeling so disconnected from you lately, and Ryan made me feel." "Don't," I said, cutting her off. "Don't you dare try to blame this on me." Jessica sobbed, her hands trembling. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'll end it. I'll block him. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I shook my head, overwhelmed by a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I don't know if this is something we can fix, Jessica," I said. "I need time to think." With that, I left the room, leaving her alone with her guilt. I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling and replaying the conversation with Jessica over and over in my mind. Her words, her tears, her excuses, they all felt hollow. I wanted to believe her when she said she'd end it with Ryan, but after everything, how could I? She had lied to me for months, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she wasn't telling me. The next morning, Jessica was already awake when I got up. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She glanced up when she saw me, her eyes red and swollen. "Eric," she started, her voice shaky, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've already blocked Ryan. I even told my boss I don't want to work with him anymore. I'll do anything to prove to you that I'm committed to fixing this." Her words sounded sincere, but they didn't bring me any comfort. "I don't know if that's enough, Jessica," I said, sitting down across from her. "You didn't just cheat on me. You betrayed my trust. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now?" She flinched at my words, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I don't blame you for feeling that way," she said. "I hate myself for what I've done. I hate that I hurt you. I hate that I let it get this far." I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to make her feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me. But another part of me was just tired, exhausted by the weight of it all. After a long pause, I finally spoke. "Why, Jessica? Why did you do it?" She looked down at her mug, her hands trembling. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I've been feeling so disconnected from you lately, and when Ryan started giving me attention, I let myself get swept up in it. It was stupid and selfish, and I regret it more than I can say." "Disconnected?" I repeated, anger bubbling up in my chest. Why didn't you talk to me about it? Why didn't you try to fix things with me instead of running to someone else? I was scared, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't want to admit how I was feeling because I thought it would just push us further apart. And then Ryan came along, and it felt easier. Easier, I said, my voice rising. Easier than being honest with your husband? Easier than working on our marriage? Jessica didn't say anything, tears streaming down her face. I stood up, unable to sit there any longer. I need to get out of here, I said. I need space to think. Eric, please, she said, her voice desperate. Don't shut me out. I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. I didn't respond. I grabbed my keys and left the house, driving aimlessly until I found myself at a park we used to visit when we first started dating. I sat on a bench, staring at the empty playground, and thought about how different things used to be. Back then, it felt like we could handle anything as long as we had each other. Now, I wasn't so sure. The idea of divorce scared me, not because I was afraid of being alone, but because it felt like admitting defeat. Like I'd failed at the one thing I thought I was good at, being a husband. But staying with Jessica felt just as impossible. How could I ever trust her again after what she'd done? After a few hours, I went back to Kyle's place. He listened as I told him everything, offering the kind of support I didn't even know I needed. You don't have to make any decisions right now, he said. Take your time. Figure out what's best for you. I nodded, knowing he was right. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what I chose, things would never be the same again. I stayed at Kyle's place for the next couple of days, trying to sort through my emotions. Jessica sent me a few texts, mostly asking if I was okay and begging me to come home so we could talk. I didn't reply to any of them. I wasn't ready. I knew she was probably sitting at home, agonizing over what she'd done, but honestly, I didn't care. She had already destroyed my trust, and her regret didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. During that time, I couldn't stop thinking about how we'd gotten to this point. I replayed every moment of our marriage, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Were there warning signs I missed? Did I do something to push her away? Or was this just who she was all along? Kyle was a good sounding board. He told me that no matter how much I tried to analyze the situation, I might never get the answers I was looking for. Sometimes people screw up for reasons they don't even understand, he said. But that doesn't mean you have to put up with it. On the third day, I decided it was time to face Jessica again. Avoiding her forever wasn't an option, especially if I wanted any chance of moving forward, whether that meant rebuilding our marriage or going our separate ways. I texted her that I was coming home and that we needed to have a serious conversation. She responded almost immediately, saying she was glad and that she loved me. When I walked through the door, Jessica was waiting for me in the living room. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. Eric, she said softly, standing up as I came in. Sit down, I said, motioning to the couch. I didn't want hugs, apologies, or excuses. I just wanted the truth. She sat, clutching her hands in her lap, while I stayed standing, pacing in front of her. I need you to answer some questions, I said. No lies, no half-truths. Just the truth. Can you do that? She nodded quickly. Yes, of course. Okay, I said, stopping to look directly at her. How long has this been going on with Ryan? Jessica hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. About 4 months, she said quietly. For months, I repeated, the weight of her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. So for 4 months, you've been sneaking around behind my back, lying to me, and acting like everything was fine? I wasn't lying about everything, she said, her voice trembling. Most of those times I said I was working late, I really was. But sometimes, I wasn't. I laughed bitterly. Great. So you were only lying some of the time. That makes it so much better. Jessica flinched, but didn't argue. I know I messed up, she said. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to make this right. I'll do whatever it takes. Why, Jessica? I asked, my voice rising. Why him? Why not talk to me if you were unhappy? Why not tell me what you were feeling instead of running to someone else? Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to answer. I don't know, she said. I was lonely, Eric. You've been so busy with work, and it felt like we were drifting apart. Ryan, he made me feel seen. I shook my head, my anger bubbling to the surface. Don't put this on me. Yes, I've been busy with work, but I've been doing it for us. For our future. That doesn't give you the right to cheat. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I know it doesn't. I hate myself for what I've done. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. The room fell silent as I tried to process her words. Part of me wanted to believe she was sincere, that she truly regretted what she'd done. But another part of me couldn't get past the fact that she had made a choice, a conscious decision to betray me. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. I need space. I can't stay here and pretend like everything is okay. I'm going to stay at Kyle's for a while, and during that time, I want you to think about what you really want. Because if we're going to try to fix this, it's going to take more than just saying you're sorry. Jessica nodded, her tears falling silently. I understand, she said. I'll do whatever it takes, Eric. I hope you'll give me a chance to make this right. I didn't respond. I grabbed a few more things from the bedroom and walked out the door, leaving her sitting alone on the couch. As I drove back to Kyle's, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard Jessica tried, things would never be the same between us again. The days I spent at Kyle's after leaving Jessica were some of the hardest I've ever faced. I was a mix of anger, heartbreak, and exhaustion. Every time I thought I was making progress in processing what had happened, a new wave of emotions would hit me like a truck. I replayed every moment of our relationship, every smile, every argument, every promise we'd made to each other. None of it felt real anymore. Jessica texted me every day. Sometimes it was long, emotional messages apologizing for what she'd done and asking for a chance to fix things. Other times, it was just short notes. I love you, or I'm thinking about you. I read every single one but never responded. I wasn't ready to engage with her. Not yet. One evening, Kyle and I were sitting on his back porch, beers in hand. He'd been giving me space to process everything. But that night, he broke the silence. You have any idea what you're going to do, man? He asked. I sighed, staring at the bottle in my hands. No. Part of me wants to just end it and walk away, but another part of me wonders if we can get past this. It's so complicated. It's only complicated if you want it to be, Kyle said. You already know the truth. The question is, can you live with it? Can you trust her again? Because if you can't, dragging this out is only going to hurt more. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. There was no point in staying together if trust wasn't something we could rebuild. But could I even try to rebuild it after what she'd done? I didn't know. The next day, Jessica called me for the first time since I left. I hesitated for a moment, staring at her name on my phone screen, before answering. Hello, Eric, she said, her voice trembling. Thank you for picking up. I just wanted to hear your voice. What do you want, Jessica? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I miss you, she said. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to know if you're willing to give me a chance to make things right. Please. Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. I don't know, Jessica, I said. I don't even know where to start. Start with honesty, she said quickly. Ask me anything. I'll tell you everything you want to know. I'll do whatever it takes. I paused, considering her offer. I had so many questions, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear the answers. I need more time, I said finally. I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. I understand, she said, her voice breaking. Just, please don't shut me out completely. We ended the call shortly after, and I spent the rest of the day thinking about her words. Maybe she really was willing to put in the effort to fix this. But was I? The next weekend, I decided to meet Jessica in person. I couldn't keep avoiding her forever, and if there was any chance of salvaging our marriage, we needed to talk face to face. I texted her and asked if she could meet me at a park near our house. She agreed immediately. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench and looking nervous. She stood up when she saw me, but I motioned for her to sit back down. We're just going to talk, I said, sitting a few feet away from her. Okay, she said softly, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Why didn't you come to me when you started feeling disconnected? I asked. Why go to Ryan instead of trying to fix things with me? She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. I was scared, she said. I thought if I told you how I was feeling, you'd get upset or think I didn't love you anymore. And then Ryan, he was there, and he made me feel important. I know that's not an excuse. I should have come to you, but I didn't, and I hate myself for that. Do you still have feelings for him? I asked, my voice tense. No, she said firmly. What I felt for him wasn't real. It was infatuation. I realized now that I was using him to fill a void I didn't even understand. But it's over. I've cut all ties with him. I studied her face, trying to gauge if she was telling the truth. Do you really think we can come back from this? I asked. Because I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Jessica's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know, Eric, she said, but I want to try. I love you, and I hate what I've done to us. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust, even if it takes years. Her words were sincere, but they didn't erase the pain. I need more than words, Jessica, I said. If I agree to try and work on this, you need to be completely transparent with me. No more lies, no more secrets. And you have to go to therapy, individually and with me. I'll do it, she said quickly. Anything you need. I nodded slowly, still unsure if I was making the right decision. This is going to be a long road, I said. And I can't promise I'll get past this. But if you're serious about fixing things, I'm willing to try. Jessica broke down, crying as she thanked me over and over. I didn't feel relief or happiness, just a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward. The weeks following that conversation in the park were some of the hardest of my life. Jessica kept her word and started therapy right away. She found a counselor who specialized in relationship issues and scheduled individual sessions for herself, as well as couples counseling for us. It was a step in the right direction, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking on eggshells, like any misstep could shatter what little progress we were making. Our first couples counseling session was tense. The therapist, a calm and empathetic woman named Dr. Harper, started by asking us both to explain what we wanted to get out of therapy. Jessica said she wanted to rebuild my trust and repair the damage she'd caused. I, on the other hand, wasn't even sure what I wanted. I'm here because I don't want to make a decision I'll regret, I admitted. But I don't know if I can forgive her. Dr. Harper nodded, her expression understanding. That's an honest place to start, Eric. Healing from betrayal is a long and painful process, and it's okay to not have all the answers yet. What's important is that both of you are willing to engage in this process. The session focused on communication, and Dr. Harper encouraged Jessica to share more about why she felt disconnected from me. Hearing her talk about her feelings of loneliness and insecurity was painful, but it also gave me a new perspective. I realized that while I hadn't caused her to cheat, I'd played a role in the breakdown of our marriage. That didn't excuse her actions, but it made me see the situation in a more nuanced way. After the session, Jessica was visibly emotional. Thank you for coming, she said as we walked to our cars. I know this isn't easy for you. It's not, I admitted. But I meant what I said. I'm trying. At home, Jessica continued to show me that she was serious about making changes. She shared her phone and email passwords without me asking, deleted all her social media accounts, and even changed jobs to avoid any possibility of running into Ryan again. She apologized repeatedly, not just for the affair, but for letting our relationship get to the point where it felt so broken. Despite her efforts, I struggled to let go of my anger and pain. Every time I looked at her, I thought about the lies, the photos, and the way she had looked at Ryan. I'd agreed to try and move forward, but I couldn't stop myself from questioning her sincerity. Was she really sorry, or was she just desperate to save face? One night, I finally brought it up. Do you ever think about him? I asked as we sat on the couch after dinner. Jessica looked at me, her expression pained. No, she said firmly. Not in the way you're thinking. I think about how much I hurt you and how much I regret ever letting him into my life. But I don't miss him, Eric. I miss us. Her words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, I felt like she truly understood the weight of what she'd done. But I still wasn't sure if I could let my guard down. I don't know if I can believe that, I said quietly. I don't know if I'll ever be able to. Jessica nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I know. And I'll keep proving it to you, every single day, for as long as it takes. Her willingness to take full responsibility for her actions was encouraging, but it didn't make the pain go away. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight, and I wasn't sure if we had enough left to rebuild at all. Several months have passed since I first found out about Jessica's affair, and while things aren't perfect, they're different now. Better in some ways, but still fragile. I wanted to share this final update because I know how much this community has helped me process everything, and maybe my story can help someone else. The therapy sessions have been grueling. In the beginning, every session felt like ripping open a wound that hadn't even started to heal. Jessica laid everything bare, the reasons she cheated, the moments she regretted but didn't stop, and how she justified her actions to herself at the time. Hearing those details was painful, but it also forced us both to confront the truth. She owned up to her mistakes, and for the first time, I felt like she wasn't hiding anything from me. One breakthrough came during an exercise in therapy where Dr. Harper asked us to write letters to each other. In my letter, I poured out all the pain, anger, and betrayal I'd been carrying. I wrote about how her actions made me question my worth as a husband and whether I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. I didn't hold back. When Jessica read my letter, she broke down sobbing. In her response, she didn't make excuses or ask for forgiveness. She just acknowledged every bit of my pain and apologized in a way that felt raw and genuine. It was the first time I felt like she truly understood the damage she had caused. Outside of therapy, Jessica has continued to show me that she's serious about repairing our marriage. She deleted Ryan's number, blocked him on every platform, and even switched her phone number to cut off any chance of him contacting her again. She also took it upon herself to rebuild connections with my family and friends, some of whom distanced themselves from her after learning about the affair. These weren't quick fixes, they were small, consistent actions that showed me she was committed to change. As for me, I've had to confront my own role in the breakdown of our relationship. No, I didn't cause Jessica to cheat, that's entirely on her. But I did neglect certain aspects of our marriage, letting work and daily life get in the way of truly connecting with her. Therapy helped me understand that I needed to take responsibility for my part if I wanted any hope of moving forward. But let's be clear, forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. I still think about the affair almost every day. It's like a scar, it doesn't hurt the same way it did in the beginning, but it's always there, a reminder of what we went through. Some days are easier than others, and there are moments when I catch myself wondering if I made the right choice by staying. But then I see how hard Jessica is working to rebuild what she broke, and it gives me hope. We've started rebuilding our relationship from the ground up. It's not easy, and there are still times when I feel like I'm holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But there are also moments of genuine connection, moments when I feel like we're rediscovering the love that brought us together in the first place. So where does that leave us now? We're still a work in progress. I don't know if we'll ever fully get back to where we were before the affair, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the goal isn't to go back, but to move forward and create something new. I'm not sure if we'll make it in the long run, but for now, we're trying. And sometimes, trying is all you can do. To anyone out there going through something similar, I want you to know that it's okay to take your time. It's okay to question everything and to put yourself first. Healing looks different for everyone, and there's no right way to handle betrayal. For me, choosing to stay was the hardest decision I've ever made, but it was also the only one that felt right in the moment. Only time will tell if it was the right choice. Thanks to everyone who followed my story and offered advice along the way. It meant more to me than I can say. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you're stronger than you think.